The call for help. Raw panic in the Galactic Council chamber. The Galactic Council chamber was filled with raw panic. Another 3 Jiran homeworlds had disappeared, and Eldari warships hung dead in space. The void was expanding, swallowing stars and systems whole. Every solution, every weapon, every plan of attack had failed. The void was consuming the galaxy at an alarming rate, and no one had an answer. Trillions of lives were at risk. A desperate proposal. As the council argued and postured, a dozen plans were proposed and struck down. The very ambassador, Orcs, silenced the room with a desperate idea. It was a long shot, based on a rumor of a species with a reputation for doing the impossible. Humans. Primitive, aggressive, unpredictable, but known for solving unsolvable problems in unorthodox ways. Orcs proposed they bring in the humans, give them everything they need, and pray that human insanity and determination could stop the void. Dr. Ethan Reeves' research. Dr. Ethan Reeves stared at the star charts scattered across his desk. The data made no sense. He had triple-checked his calculations, but the impossible readings persisted. It was as if the laws of physics were unraveling at the seams. A knock at the door jolted him from his thoughts. It was well past midnight. Who could be visiting at this hour? An unexpected visit. Reeves opened the door to find a trio of figures standing in the hallway. They were dressed in sleek, form-fitting suits that shimmered under the fluorescent lights. The one in the center, a tall, slender being with iridescent skin and piercing violet eyes, stepped forward. "Dr. Reeves, I presume?" the alien asked, its voice melodic and soothing. Reeves nodded, his mind racing. He had always believed in the possibility of extraterrestrial life, but having them standing at his doorstep was surreal. Ambassador Orcs' plea. "I am Ambassador Orcs of the Galactic Council. We have come to seek your assistance in a matter of utmost urgency." Reeves invited them inside his cramped office, which suddenly felt even smaller with the presence of the alien delegation. Orcs explained the situation, the void, the failed attempts to stop it, and the Council's desperate decision to turn to humanity for help. "Why Dr. Reeves? But why me?" Reeves asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Orcs fixed him with an intense gaze. "Your research, Dr. Reeves, your theories on the nature of space-time, and the potential for manipulating it, we believe they may hold the key to stopping the void." A decision made. Reeves leaned back in his chair, his mind reeling. He had always dreamed of his work being recognized, but never by an alien council seeking to save the galaxy. I don't know if I can leave my research behind," he stammered, gesturing to the piles of papers and data pads littering his desk. A reassuring touch. Orcs placed a hand on Reeves's shoulder, its touch warm and reassuring. "Dr. Reeves, I understand your hesitation, but the fate of trillions hangs in the balance. Your research will be waiting for you when you return, and the discoveries you make with us will be beyond anything you could imagine." A journey begins. Reeves took a deep breath, his decision made. He packed a bag with a few essentials and followed the delegation to their waiting ship. As he buckled himself into his seat, he felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation coursing through his veins. He was about to embark on the most important journey of his life. Arrival at the Galactic Council headquarters. The journey to the Galactic Council's headquarters was a blur of winding corridors and shimmering portals. Reeves tried to take in every detail, his mind racing with questions and theories. When they finally emerged into the council chamber, he found himself standing before a sea of alien faces, each more bizarre and wondrous than the last. The representatives regarded him with a mix of curiosity and skepticism, whispering among themselves. The council's decision. It was clear that not everyone shared the ambassador's faith in human potential. Orcs stepped forward, his voice ringing out across the chamber. "Esteemed members of the council, I present to you Dr. Ethan Reeves, the human who may hold the key to our salvation." Reeves swallowed hard as all eyes turned to him. He had faced tough audiences before, but nothing could have prepared him for this moment. A glimmer of hope. Zorks led Reeves to a private chamber, where he began to brief him on the nature of the void. Holographic displays flared to life, showing the relentless advance of the darkness as it consumed star after star. "We have tried everything," Zorks said, his voice heavy with despair. "Every weapon, every strategy. Nothing has worked. The void simply absorbs everything we throw at it." A new idea. Reeves studied the data, his brow furrowed in concentration. There was something oddly familiar about the patterns of the void's expansion, something that tugged at the edges of his memory. He turned to Zorks, his eyes alight with sudden realization. "Ambassador, I think I may have an idea." The plan. Formulating a plan. Reeves pored over the star charts and data pads, his eyes darting from one piece of information to the next. The more he studied the void's behavior, the more unsettled he became. There was something almost deliberate about the way it consumed galaxies, as if it were following a predetermined path. A sentient void. He turned to Zorks, who had been watching him work with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "Ambassador, I don't think we're dealing with a simple cosmic phenomenon here. The void. It seems to have a mind of its own." The ambassador's shock. Zorks's violet eyes widened. "What do you mean, Dr. Reeves?" "Evidence of intelligence." Reeves gestured to the holographic display, where the void's tendrils snaked through the galaxy like a malevolent entity. "Look at the way it moves, the systems it targets. It's not random. It's almost as if it's choosing its victims." A troubling confirmation. The ambassador's face grew grim. "We have suspected as much, but to have it confirmed by an outside observer is troubling indeed." A new approach. Reeves nodded, his mind racing with the implications. If the void was sentient, then the Council's previous attempts to stop it would have been like trying to reason with a hurricane. No wonder they had failed so spectacularly. He turned back to the data, running simulation after simulation. There had to be a way to communicate with the void, to understand its motives, and find a way to stop it. A bold proposal. An idea began to take shape in his mind, a plan so audacious that he almost dismissed it outright. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized it might be their only chance. He turned to Zorks, his voice low and urgent. "Ambassador, I think I know how we can stop the void, but it's going to be risky. I'll need your help to convince the Council to go along with it." Convincing the Council. Zorks leaned in, his expression intense. "Tell me." Communicating with the void. Reeves took a deep breath, then launched into his explanation. "We need to communicate with the void, to try and understand what it wants. To do that, we need to send a probe directly into its heart. A suicide mission." The ambassador's eyes widened in shock. "Dr. Reeves, that's suicide. No ship has ever survived contact with the void." "A probe, not a ship." Reeves shook his head. "Not a ship, Ambassador. A probe. One specifically designed to withstand the void's energy and transmit data back to us. If we can gather enough information, we might be able to find a way to negotiate with it, or at least predict its next move." A difficult decision. Zorks was silent for a long moment, his brow furrowed in thought. Finally, he nodded. "It's a bold plan, Dr. Reeves, but at this point, we have little to lose. I will do my best to convince the Council to support your efforts." Winning approval. The Council chamber was in an uproar when Reeves and Zorks presented the plan. Representatives from a dozen species shouted their objections, their voices rising in a cacophony of fear and anger. "A necessary risk. This is madness," one counselor cried. "We cannot risk more lives on a foolish gambit." Skepticism and doubt. "The human is delusional," another sneered. "He knows nothing of the void's power." Reeves takes the stand. Reeves stood before them, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he had only one chance to convince them, to make them see the necessity of his plan. He raised his hands, his voice cutting through the din. "Esteemed members of the Council, I understand your reservations, but we have tried every other option, and none have succeeded. The void continues to grow, and with each passing moment, more lives are lost. Presenting the evidence, he gestured to the holographic display, where the void's tendrils pulsed and writhed. We cannot hope to destroy the void through force alone, but if we can communicate with it, if we can understand its nature and its desires, we may yet find a way to stop it. A silent decision. The chamber fell silent, the weight of Reeves' words hanging in the air. Zork stepped forward, his voice calm and measured. Dr. Reeves' plan is audacious, yes, but it is also our best hope. I move that we grant him the resources and support he needs to see it through. A new challenge. For a long, tense moment, no one spoke. Then, one by one, the counselors began to nod their assent. Some still looked doubtful, but none raised further objections. Reeves felt a surge of relief and determination. He had won the council's approval, but he knew the real challenge was just beginning. Building the probe. Designing and building the probe would be a monumental task, one that would require all of his skill and knowledge. But he was ready. With the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance, he would do whatever it took to unravel the mystery of the void and find a way to stop its relentless advance. Ready for the journey. Zorks placed a hand on Reeves' shoulder, his eyes glinting with a mix of hope and concern. Dr. Reeves, I have faith in your abilities, but I must warn you. The path ahead will be fraught with danger and uncertainty. Are you prepared for what lies ahead? A steely resolve. Reeves met the ambassador's gaze, his jaw set with determination. I am, Ambassador. I didn't come all this way to back down now. Let's get to work. The mission. Preparing for the mission. Reeves stood before the small group of volunteers, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Zara, the Zephyrin pilot, checked the sleek spacecraft's systems with a practiced eye, her iridescent scales shimmering under the hangar's bright lights. Thorin, the burly Eldari engineer, tinkered with the probe's delicate components, his deft fingers making final adjustments. The briefing. All right, team, Reeves said, his voice steady despite the enormity of their mission. We all know what's at stake here. The void is expanding at an alarming rate, and we may be the only ones who can stop it. Are you ready? Determined allies. Zara and Thorin exchanged a glance, their expressions a mix of determination and apprehension. They nodded in unison, their resolve clear. As they boarded the spacecraft, Reeves couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude for their bravery. These aliens, who had every reason to doubt him, had chosen to stand by his side and face the unknown. Journey to the void's edge. The journey to the void's edge was tense, the ship's sensors picking up increasingly erratic readings as they drew closer. Zara's hands flew over the controls, her brow furrowed in concentration as she navigated the treacherous anomalies that threatened to tear the ship apart. An unraveling reality. I've never seen anything like this, she muttered, her voice tight with strain. It's like the laws of physics are unraveling before our eyes. Facing the void, Reeves leaned forward, his gaze fixed on the viewscreen. The void loomed ahead, a vast expanse of darkness that seemed to swallow the very stars themselves. He felt a shiver run down his spine, a primal fear that threatened to overwhelm him. But he pushed it aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. Establishing contact. They had to establish contact with the void, to find a way to communicate with the entity that had consumed so many worlds. As they approached the void's boundary, the ship shuddered and bucked, the anomalies growing more intense with each passing moment. A desperate maneuver. Thorin worked frantically to keep the probe stable, his face etched with concentration. We're losing power, Zara cried, her fingers dancing across the controls. The void's energy is draining our systems. An inspired idea. Reeves gritted his teeth, his mind racing. They had come too far to turn back now, but if they couldn't find a way to stabilize the ship, they would be lost forever. And then, in a flash of insight, He remembered a theory he had once proposed, a wild idea that had been dismissed by his colleagues as impossible. But here, on the edge of the abyss, it might just be their only chance. Creating a feedback loop. Thorin, reroute all power to the probe's shielding, he ordered, his voice calm and steady. We need to create a feedback loop, using the void's own energy against it. A critical moment. The Eldari engineer hesitated for a moment, then nodded, his fingers flying over the console. The ship shuddered again, the lights flickering as the probe's shielding glowed with an eerie blue light. And then, miraculously, the anomalies began to subside, the ship stabilizing as the probe pushed forward into the void's heart. Into the darkness. Reeves felt a surge of elation, tempered by the knowledge that their true challenge was only just beginning. As the probe delved deeper into the darkness, Reeves reached out with his mind, seeking the consciousness that he knew must lie at the void's core. A first contact. At first, there was nothing, only a vast emptiness that threatened to engulf his very soul. But then, like a whisper on the wind, he felt it, a presence ancient and unfathomable, that seemed to regard him with a mix of curiosity and disdain. A voice from the void. "Who are you?" Reeves asked, his thoughts projected into the void. "Why are you consuming the galaxy?" The void's answer. For a long moment, there was silence, and then a voice that seemed to echo from the depths of time itself replied. "We are the void," it said, its tone cold and implacable. "We are the balance, the counterweight to the unchecked growth of sentient life." A shocking revelation. Reeves reeled, his mind struggling to comprehend the enormity of the void's words. The entity saw itself not as a destroyer, but as a necessary force of nature, a check against the rampant expansion of civilizations that threatened to upset the delicate balance of the universe. A plea for understanding. But surely there must be another way, Reeves argued, his thoughts tinged with desperation. Sentient life has the capacity for great good, for innovation and progress. Surely we can find a way to coexist, to grow in harmony with the universe. A moment of doubt. The void was silent for a long moment, and Reeves feared that he had overstepped, that he had angered the entity beyond reason. But then, to his surprise, he felt a flicker of something that might have been doubt, a momentary hesitation in the void's implacable resolve. A glimmer of hope. "Your words are intriguing, human," the void said, its voice tinged with a hint of curiosity. "But the balance must be maintained. The growth of sentient life must be checked, or the universe itself will be consumed by the chaos of unchecked expansion." A critical decision. Reeves felt a spark of hope, a glimmer of possibility in the void's words. If he could just find a way to convince the entity that there was another path, that sentient life could grow and thrive without upsetting the balance, then perhaps there was still a chance to save the galaxy. A timely retreat. But even as he opened his mouth to speak, the ship shuddered again, the probe's shielding beginning to fail under the void's relentless assault. Zara's voice crackled over the intercom, her tone urgent and strained. A strategic withdrawal. "Reeves, we need to pull back," she cried, the ship bucking and jolting as she struggled to maintain control. "The probe can't take much more of this." Choosing survival. Reeves hesitated, torn between the desire to continue his dialogue with the void and the knowledge that his team's lives hung in the balance. But in the end, there was no choice to be made. "Understood," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "Bring us back, Zara. We'll have to find another way." Back to the council. Returning to headquarters, as the ship pulled away from the void's boundary, Reeves couldn't shake the feeling that he had been on the cusp of something momentous, that he had glimpsed a truth that could change the course of the galaxy itself. But for now, they had to regroup, to find a way to convince the council of what they had learned. A new understanding. The void was not a mindless destroyer, but a force of nature that saw itself as a necessary check against the excesses of sentient life. If they could find a way to prove to the entity that growth and balance could coexist, that sentient life could thrive without upsetting the delicate equilibrium of the universe, then perhaps there was still hope for the future. A grim determination. As the ship hurtled back towards the Council's headquarters, Reeves stared out at the stars, his mind racing with possibilities. The road ahead would be long and fraught with danger, but he knew that he could not rest until he had found a way to save the galaxy from the void's inexorable advance. A hero's resolve. For in the end, that was what it meant to be human, to stare into the face of the unknown, to grapple with forces beyond comprehension, and to never, ever give up. Facing the Council. The journey back to the Galactic Council's headquarters was a blur of anxiety and anticipation. Reeves paced the length of the ship, his mind racing with the implications of what they had learned. The void was not a mindless destroyer, but a force of balance, a response to the unchecked growth of sentient life. It was a truth that could shake the very foundations of the galactic order. A new truth. As they docked at the space station, Reeves took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation to come. Zara and Thorin flanked him, their expressions grim but determined. They had risked their lives to uncover this truth, and they would stand by him no matter what. Council in chaos. The council chamber was in an uproar as they entered, the representatives of a dozen species shouting and gesticulating wildly. Ambassador Orcs stood at the center of the storm, his violet eyes flashing with anger and frustration. A desperate call. "Dr. Reeves," he called out, his voice cutting through the din. "Please, tell us what you have learned." Presenting the findings. Reeves stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked out at the sea of alien faces, some curious, some hostile, and took a deep breath. The truth revealed. "Esteemed members of the Council," he began, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "We have made contact with the void, and what we have learned is both profound and disturbing. A new perspective." He paused, letting his words sink in. The chamber fell silent, the representatives leaning forward in their seats. "The void is not a mindless destroyer," Reeves continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "It is a manifestation of the universe's attempt to balance itself against the unchecked growth of sentient life. Our own actions, our reckless expansion and exploitation of resources, have contributed to its emergence." Outrage and fear. The chamber erupted in shouts of disbelief and outrage. Representatives leaped to their feet, their faces contorted with anger. Accusations fly. "Lies," one shouted, his fist pounding the air. "The human is a traitor, a pawn of the void. He seeks to undermine our authority." Standing firm. Reeves stood his ground, his eyes blazing with conviction. "I understand your skepticism," he said, his voice rising above the din. "But we have seen the truth with our own eyes. The void is a consequence of our own actions, and if we do not change our ways, it will consume us all." Ambassador's support. Ambassador Orcs stepped forward, his expression grave. "Dr. Reeves speaks the truth," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I have seen the data, and I believe that we must heed his warnings." A turning point. The chamber fell silent once more, the representatives exchanging uneasy glances. Reeves could see the fear in their eyes, the realization that their entire way of life was at stake. Seeking solutions. "But what can we do?" one representative asked, her voice trembling. "How can we stop the void?" A call for change. Reeves took a deep breath, his mind racing with possibilities. "We must change our ways," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "We must learn to live in harmony with the universe, to respect its balance and its limits. We must find a way to grow and thrive without upsetting the delicate equilibrium that sustains us all." A new path. A new understanding. The representatives murmured among themselves, some nodding in agreement, others shaking their heads in denial. Reeves could feel the tension in the room, the weight of the decision that lay before them. Voices of support. And then, a voice rang out from the back of the chamber. It was the representative of the Zeons, Zara's people. "Dr. Reeves is right," she said, her voice clear and strong. We have seen the consequences of our own actions, the devastation that our reckless expansion has wrought. It is time for us to change, to find a new way forward. A growing consensus. Other representatives began to speak up, their voices joining in a chorus of support. Reeves felt a surge of hope, a glimmer of possibility in the darkness. The challenge ahead. But even as the tide began to turn, he knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult. Changing the ways of a galaxy was no small feat, and there would be those who resisted, who clung to the old ways out of fear and stubbornness. A leader's determination. He looked out at the sea of faces, his jaw set with determination. He would not rest until he had convinced them all, until he had found a way to stop the void and bring balance to the universe. For he knew that the fate of all sentient beings rested on his shoulders, and he would not let them down. A team united. As the council members began to argue and debate, Reeves took a step back, his mind already racing with plans and possibilities. He caught Zora's eye from across the room, saw the determination and the fear in her gaze. Thorin, too, his brow furrowed with concern, but his stance unwavering. They had started this journey together, and they would see it through to the end, no matter the cost. A new mission, for they knew that the universe was counting on them, that the lives of trillions hung in the balance. Reeves squared his shoulders, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. He had never been one to back down from a fight, and this was the fight of his life. The fight for the future of the galaxy. The fight for the very soul of the universe itself. A promise to the future, and he would not rest until he had won, until he had brought light to the darkness and hope to the hopeless. For that was what it meant to be human, to stare into the face of the impossible and say, "I will not be defeated." Stepping into the unknown. The road ahead would be long and treacherous, but Reeves knew that he had the strength and the will to see it through. And with his team by his side, with the power of human ingenuity and determination at his back, he knew that anything was possible. The journey continues. So he took a deep breath and stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The fate of the universe was in his hands, and he would not let it fall. United in purpose, with renewed determination, Reeves and his team set to work. They would find a way to communicate with the void, to understand its motives, and find a way to coexist. They would prove to the entity that growth and balance could coexist, that sentient life could thrive without upsetting the delicate equilibrium of the universe. A new hope. For they had seen the truth, and they knew that there was still hope for the future, and they would fight with every ounce of their strength, every fiber of their being, to build a future where all species could thrive in harmony with the cosmos.